and welcome to Diabetes Connections in the News. I'm Stacey Sims, and these are the top diabetes stories and headlines of the past 7 days. In the News is brought to you by the T1D Exchange. T1D Exchange is a nonprofit organization dedicated to improving outcomes for the entire T1D population. Our top story this week, the Inflation Reduction Act is now law, and that means a big change for Medicare patients. Among other things, it limits insulin copays to $35 per month for Medicare Part D beneficiaries starting in 2023. There's also an annual out-of-pocket cap on Part D prescription drugs, which is $2,000. That starts in 2025. Medicare will also now have the ability to negotiate the costs of certain prescription drugs. Democrats say they will try to bring a standalone proposal to cap the price of insulin for a broader population this fall. Did the tuberculosis vaccine protect people with type 1 from COVID and other infectious diseases? Researchers at Harvard Medical School and Massachusetts General Hospital have published a new paper looking at the BCG, or tuberculosis vaccine, in a double-blind placebo-controlled study of patients with type 1 conducted at the start of the pandemic before COVID vaccines were available. Only 12.5% of placebo-treated individuals and 1% of BCG-treated individuals had confirmed COVID-19. That means a vaccine effectiveness of 92%. The BCG vaccine group also displayed protective effects against other infectious diseases, including fewer symptoms and less severity, and there were no adverse events reported. The participants had previously enrolled in a clinical trial testing the effectiveness of the BCG vaccine for type 1 diabetes. They had received multiple vaccinations before the onset of the pandemic in early 2020. Some news from Tandem Diabetes. In a recent investor call, the CEO was talking about the Mobi pump. We used to call this the T-Sport. It's about half the size of the T-Slim pump. There's no screen, and it can be fully controlled by the user's smartphone. CEO John Sheridan says, quote, "We are in the final stages of testing as well as drafting the submission and intend to submit to the FDA this quarter." He noted Tandem is already preparing for a commercial launch following FDA clearance, tentatively expecting to snag, says this write-up, in the first half of 2023. Sheridan went on to say that Tandem is also working with Dexcom and Abbott to integrate its insulin pumps with the newest continuous glucose monitors. That is the G7 from Dexcom, which is still under FDA review, and the Freestyle Libre 3, which was already cleared by the FDA. So I will follow up with Tandem and find out what Sheridan means by that. They've had an agreement with Abbott for the Libre for a while, but it sounded just a few months ago that there were still a few stumbling blocks to the actual integration. Much more to come. Interesting progress on glucose-responsive insulin, also called smart insulin. These researchers at Indiana University envision ultra-stable proteins containing a glucagon analog stapled to an insulin analog. Preliminary studies are moving along. As the name indicates, this would be insulin that only responds when there's too much glucose in the blood, making the risk of low blood sugar much less likely. You'll recall last year, Lilly bought Protomer Technologies, which had smart insulin in preclinical development. New CEO over at Beta Bionics, that's the company behind the iLet Bionic Pancreas, currently in front of the FDA. Sean Saint will be the new CEO. Martha Goldberg Aronson was the interim. We talked to her for the podcast a few months ago, and she will remain on the Beta Bionics board of directors. Saint is an engineer, entrepreneur, diabetes technologist, and innovator, says the press release, and he lives with type 1. He's a really interesting story. He started at Medtronic and worked at Tandem and Dexcom, but it was after working at those diabetes companies that he developed type 1 as an adult. Then he founded Companion Medical, makers of the InPen. A lot going on here. In addition to becoming the CEO of Beta Bionics, I've reached out. I hope he comes on the podcast soon. Possible new way to look for type 2 diabetes before there are any severe symptoms. Researchers from the University of Geneva found that a decline in one molecule indicates a loss of functional beta cells. This molecule, which can be easily detected by a blood test, may be utilized to detect the onset of diabetes in at-risk individuals. The researchers say this opens new avenues for preventing diabetes. A simple blood test followed by an inexpensive specific test here could identify potential diabetes onset, prompting action before people have severe symptoms. Right back to the news in just a moment, but first, the T1D Exchange is our sponsor, and the T1D Exchange Registry is something you really want to know about. This is a research study. It's conducted online, and it's designed to foster innovation and improve the lives of people with type 1. Your personal information remains confidential. Your participation is fully voluntary. But once you sign up, you can complete surveys and sign up for studies. The registry aims to improve knowledge of T1D, accelerate the discovery and development of new treatments and technologies, and generate evidence to support policy or insurance changes that all help the T1D community. It is so simple to do. Get more information or register at t1dregistry.org/Stacey. That is t1dregistry.org/STACEY. Students at the American University in Cairo have developed a device that non-invasively measures blood glucose levels. This won them first place in the Johns Hopkins Healthcare Design Competition this year. The device uses near-infrared spectroscopy. It's called GlucoClip, and there's also a mobile app. The project took a year, with the team having designed a prototype, testing it on more than 100 people. Bit of an editorial. Amazing that it took students less than a year. We've been promised this for a very long time. We'll see if some of the large commercial companies can accomplish this goal and get it to market anytime soon. Abbott and Weight Watchers are teaming up. They've set up what they call a strategic partnership that will help people living with diabetes better understand and manage their condition and their weight. The release says both companies are bringing their marketed products together to help patients while also boosting their use. The partnership will start in earnest next year and initially focus on the U.S. Next week in my long-format episode, we are talking back to school. The wonderful diabetes educator Anna Sabino from Finding Smiles Coaching will join me to talk 504s, remote monitoring, supplies, and a lot more. And the episode that's out right now is with Patients for Affordable Drugs, about the bill we talked about that mostly focuses on drug pricing and Medicare. The insulin copay cap was removed, but there's a lot more to say there, and you can find that wherever you get your podcasts. Quick reminder, my next book, Still the World's Worst Diabetes Mom, is in pre-sales. Right now, you can order it at diabetes-connections.com. I will put a link in the show notes. And if you use the promo code EARLYBIRD, you can save $5 off the cover price. That is only good through the end of August, but it's also good on the first book. And it's good for no matter how many copies you buy. You can learn more at the website, but remember the promo code is EARLYBIRD, all one word. And that is it for In the News this week. If you like it, please share it. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you back here soon.
Diabetes Connections is a production of Stacey Sims Media. All rights reserved, all wrongs avenged.